Hello and welcome to our first RE lesson of the unit. So our learning today is going to be, as a theologian, can I understand a Buddhist view of peace and suffering? So in this unit, we're going to be thinking about peace and suffering and whether violence is ever right. We're going to come to the question of whether violence is ever right once we've looked through different religions and their beliefs and how they live according to those beliefs. So then we can link that to whether they would feel that violence would ever be justified. So we're going to look in detail at 3 different religions with a little bit of a link to Christianity as well, and how their beliefs affect the way they live and the way that they behave towards others, because a lot of peace and suffering and the idea of whether violence is wrong or right in certain situations is about how we behave towards each other and how we react to the actions of others. Okay, so to start with, we need to think about suffering, and actually it is all around us. If you look in the news, the majority of the news that you see is about people suffering in some way. I mean, at the moment, obviously, a lot of what is in the news is around coronavirus and unfortunately the people dying from coronavirus and being affected by it. And some of the things are obviously less of the problem, but still make some people suffer. So for example, I've got some here: schools in Scotland to remain closed until mid-February for those children that were looking forward to getting back to school, and for the parents who are trying to work from home. This will cause an element of suffering. So also, why are some playgrounds in England shut? Again, that will cause an element of suffering for those with young children that want to get them out and about, but you know, being able to use playgrounds makes life a bit easier, but they're shut for various reasons. So it will cause suffering, but for a good reason, because obviously we don't want to be passing on the virus. Supermarkets are making rules on face masks stricter. A lot of people think this is a really good thing, and absolutely, if it keeps us safe, then it definitely is. However, there are people out there who really struggle in a face mask. It might be because they have sensory issues, or it might be because they have breathing issues. And even though there are people in the news who say, well, you know, breathing isn't affected by a face mask, it doesn't make a difference. It can be a psychological thing, something that's going on in your mind when you've got something over your face. Maybe you find it harder to breathe, a bit like if you're claustrophobic and don't like small spaces, there's no reason why you can't breathe equally as well in a small space, but our mind kind of does things. So for some people, that will cause suffering, that they have to wear that mask. They'll do it because they have to, but it might be something that makes them feel very uncomfortable. The snowstorm causes 130 car pileup in Japan, definitely causing suffering there for people who were involved in that. And this poor woman in Thailand jailed for 43 years over monarchy posts. That means that she was writing things in posts about the monarchy, king or queen in Thailand, and for that she has been put into jail for 43 years now. I think that's pretty high up there on suffering. So as you can see, lots in the news around suffering. There's also lots of lovely things as well. I did have to look around for these, so it's good that there's lots of news out there that's positive as well. But there is suffering out there, and we all experience it at some point in our lives. So the 4 Noble Truths are one of the Buddha's key teachings. They explain the problems humans face and why. The truths also begin to offer some understanding into how humans can escape these problems. So in the next lesson, we will learn a little bit more about the story of Buddha and how he came to be quite so important, and why his teachings are so important to the Buddhist faith. So the first of the 4 Noble Truths: all human life involves suffering. This is known as dukkha. My apologies, I'm probably not explaining that, pronouncing that correctly. It doesn't mean that humans are never happy. However, even things that make us happy will eventually end. This is because the world is always changing. It is impermanent. So it can be as simple as thinking about Christmas Day, for example. Obviously not in the Buddhist religion, but in Christianity. Everybody who celebrates Christmas really looks forward to Christmas Day. And in fact, we build up to it for very, very long time. This last Christmas, probably more so than others due to lockdowns and things. So you put your Christmas tree up, you buy the presents, you wrap the presents, you're really looking forward to it. You've written your Christmas list, you're waiting for Father Christmas, and then it all happens in one day and then it's done. So even when we're really, really happy, there is an end to it. So the end of Christmas Day, yes, we've still got the toys, we've got things to play with, but there's almost a bit of a downer, isn't there? Boxing Day is always a bit like, oh, Christmas is over, we've got a whole year to wait. So it's about anything that makes us happy will eventually end, because the world is always changing, it's always moving on. The second noble truth, the root of suffering is craving. This is the idea that humans always want things, we're never satisfied. This leads to suffering, as in an impermanent world, we can't get everything we want. So the world's always changing, we're never going to get everything we want. It's that old saying, isn't it? The grass is always greener on the other side. You always want what you haven't got. And then when you've got that, you think, oh, actually, what I had was fine. Maybe I want to go back to that. So it's the constant, oh, I want that, oh, I want that, I want that. So it's the cravings and being able to suppress those. So noble truth number 3, we can escape suffering if we learn to be contented and stop craving. This is a tricky one to do. This state is known as nirvana. Buddha achieved this through his enlightenment. So it's a really big one, this, to try and stop wanting things that you don't have, to stop craving what the other person has got. Really tricky, but that is what Buddhists believe you're working towards. Not that it'll just happen, but that you need to work towards it. So we can end suffering by following what Buddha described as the middle way. This involves living a life which is somewhere between the luxurious life that Buddha lived in his palace and the poor, difficult life he lived as a holy man. This is known as the Eightfold Path. So Buddha started his life in a palace in luxury, and then he left that to see what was happening in the world. And so then he lived in a very difficult life and was suffering and saw suffering for the very first time. And the idea is that this middle way is kind of between this life of luxury and the life of suffering and nothing. So that's how we can end suffering, is by not craving this, but being content with this, so that we don't end up down here with the suffering. So finding that middle way. So a recap. Number 1, suffering exists in many forms, and it will be different for everybody. What makes one person suffer may not be a problem for somebody else, and vice versa. Number 2, there is a cause to suffering. Number 3, there is a cure to suffering and an end to suffering. And the cure for suffering, number 4, is to follow the Eightfold Path to enlightenment. So the cure is to stop craving what you don't have. So thinking about the Eightfold Path, what 8 rules would you live by, do you think? Do you think that everybody would be happy with those rules? Can you make everybody happy with 8 rules? And what do you think would be the most important rule? So I'd like you to pause now and have a go at thinking about what 8 rules do you think, if you lived by them, you would be happy and as many people as possible would be happy. You can think about it in a small way, thinking about it in your house and the people that you're living with. You could think about it as being in your class or in the school, or you could really go for gold here and you could challenge yourself and think about what 8 rules could we say that the world, or the country if you want to go a bit smaller, should live by. What do you think those 8 rules would be? And would everybody be happy? Can you make everybody happy? Okay, so I'd like you to pause now and have a go at that. Okay, so hopefully you came up with 8 rules, and maybe a most important one. Be interesting to see what those were, so please feel free to upload those as part of your work today. So the Eightfold Path to enlightenment, this is your middle way. So not the luxury, not the suffering, the middle way to avoid the suffering without craving what's luxury. So I'm going to work my way around like a clock face here. So we've got the right view. You need to have the right view. You need to know the truth. For example, I know that I am never going to be able to afford a PlayStation 5, so I'm just going to have to live with the Xbox that I've got. Okay, the right intention, free your mind of evil. So the think of good things, think of the right things. So I think evil is quite a strong word here, but if you're tempted to do something that you shouldn't, it's that little kind of voice in your head that's saying, you're going to get into trouble for this. So listen to that voice, have the right intention, do things for the right reason. Okay. Right speech, say nothing that hurts others. So this is, don't lie, don't gossip about somebody else, don't say anything mean to somebody. So thinking before you speak. Right action, work for the good of others. So we looked at this when we looked at the Muslim faith last half term, and we talked about their giving to charity. So working for the good of others, doing things that will help somebody else. And it doesn't have to be in a big way. It doesn't have to be giving money to charity if you don't have very much money. It can be, oh, actually, look, the dishwasher's finished. Dad, mum, really busy doing their work. I've got 5 minutes before I start my next lesson. I'll empty the dishwasher for them. So doing things that will help other people with the right action. The right livelihood, respect life. So don't take the life of anything. Even, if it's that wasp that's just stung you, releasing that wasp, getting it away from you, but not necessarily killing it. Okay, so the right action towards life, respecting all life, even the tiniest ant or the tiniest flea, respecting life as much as you can. The right effort, resisting evil, very, very clear link to the right intention. So the right intention, I suppose, is actually not even thinking about doing the wrong thing. Right effort is not only do you not think about it, you don't do it. Okay, so you've got both elements there. The right concentration, practice meditation. You can do that through yoga, through just sitting, listening to some music, trying to free your mind of everything and just give yourself space to be you and to just sit and be. Right mindfulness, the controlling of your thoughts. So being able to control what you think about, to control how you think about things, maybe questioning yourself and your judgments about things. So if you're automatically thinking, oh dear, that person's wearing a terrible pair of jeans, they're horrible, they're all full of holes, and actually thinking, actually, no, that's not a kind thing to be thinking. So it's not only are you not saying it, but you're actually controlling your mind and thinking, well, there might be a reason for that. Maybe they think they look really good. Sorry about that. We had a brief interruption, but all good, all fine, sorted. So this is our eightfold path to enlightenment. Lovely. Hopefully that's all clear. Right, so I want you to think about, I'll just move my face so I'm not in the way, hopefully. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Right. Sorry about that. So I want you to think about which path this would break. So a student was walking home one day after school and noticed that an elderly person walking ahead had suddenly dropped a £20 note. The student picks the £20 note up from the floor and puts it in her pocket. Okay, so which paths do you think this breaks? Have a think. You can pause me if you like. Okay, so I think we can probably link this to a few of these. So I think right action, working for the good of others. Well, that elderly person probably really needs that £20. Okay, they probably don't have a huge amount of money, or quite possibly don't have a huge amount of money. So the right action would be to say, oh, excuse me, you've dropped that £20 note. So we've broken that path, haven't we? That right action. We also don't have the right intention, do we? Our intention is to pick that up and keep it, isn't it, if we put it in our pockets? And therefore, so we haven't had the right intention, and as that links automatically to the right effort and resisting evil, we haven't made the right effort. So we've thought, I'm going to keep that, and we've also put it in our pocket. So we've thought it that we're going to keep it, and we've put it into our pocket, so we've not resisted evil either. And also, to a degree, the right view, knowing the truth. We're kind of telling ourselves that it's okay to do that, and it's not. So therefore we're lying to ourselves, aren't we? Or this person is lying to themselves. So they haven't got the right view of the world at the same time. Okay. So your task today, I'm going to try and move me again without, there we go. Okay, so there is a separate resource sheet, which I'll show you in a moment. I would like you to choose one of the scenarios. There are 7 of them, so plenty to choose from. You only have to choose one. If you want to do more, you're very welcome to, but you only need to do one. I'd like you to write that person a letter of advice about to help them with their feelings, I'd like you to refer to the Eightfold Paths in your letter. So with bronze, I'd like you to refer to at least one of the Eightfold Paths. With silver, at least 2 of them. Gold, I'd like you to refer to as many of the Eightfold Paths as you can. That obviously makes sense with that scenario. And I'd like you to include a reference to suffering from the 4 Noble Truths. So to refer to how that person might be suffering in that situation, or how the other person is suffering in that situation. So let's have a little look at what I might mean by that. So here we have our dilemmas. So let's have a look at our first dilemma. Jack's parents are very rich and have bought him the new iPhone for his birthday. His best friend is Sam, whose parents are not rich. Sam feels embarrassed and annoyed when Jack is showing people his new phone because he, Sam, has to share his with his little brother. How can Sam use the Eightfold Path to stop feeling jealous of Jack? Okay, so if we look back at our Eightfold Path, okay, so what could we tell him to think about? So, how about the right mindfulness? He needs to control his thoughts and think about what he does have rather than what he doesn't have. We could also think about, so that would be enough for bronze to write about that in making sure you're writing full sentences for me. Jealousy might be considered to be the wrong intention. So actually to think about what you do have in common in Jack and what you like about Jack rather than what you don't like about him and the fact that you're jealous of him. So freeing your mind of evil there. And possibly the right action. Rather than worrying about what you don't have, think about saving for it. Or if your parents don't have a huge amount of money, how can you help them out? What could you do to help? So you can give those sorts of pieces of advice, and then we can have a look if we come up to the Noble Truths. So the idea that actually where we had, here we go, the third Noble Truth, we can escape suffering if we learn to be contented and stop craving. So Sam is craving for something that Jack has and that he doesn't. So we could, for gold, we can talk about that in our answer. So we can say, actually, craving is one of the 4 Noble Truths, and this we're aiming to live the middle life. And so you really need to start thinking about what you do have and what you are grateful for and the wonderful things that you do have in common with Jack, rather than being concerned about what you don't have and what he has. You need to find that middle path. So really showing that you understand how a Buddhist would respond to this situation. Okay, so choose one of those dilemmas for me. You're very welcome to do the one I've just talked through if you're finding it tricky. I'd love to see some different ones though, that would be wonderful. So think about which of the Eightfold Paths are they breaking, and which of the Eightfold Paths do they need to think about to help them. So we're offering the advice. So you need to start thinking about helping with this, or you need to start thinking about saying the right thing to this person. So linking to the Eightfold Path. And then if you are doing gold, it would be lovely to see you referring to suffering and craving, which obviously is really, really tight with the 4 Noble Truths. Okay, thank you.